Hello everyone, I'm Retro227. Welcome to my DualGap Eco tutorial. Let's get started. Which building do you build first when you play DualGap as an eco? A land factory, an air factory, a power generator, or a mass extractor? Mass extractors and power generators are definitely suboptimal on DualGap, so the choice is between a land factory and an air factory. Both options have pros and cons. First, a land factory needs 30 more mass, while an air factory needs 300 more energy. The land factory seems better eco-wise, since building a land factory allows you to build 4 mass extractors before building the hydro, but you can only build 3 mass extractors before hydro if you choose to build an air factory first. Second, if you are upgrading the T1 factory to a T2 HQ, different HQs have different costs. The land factory takes more mass to upgrade, while the air factory takes more energy. When you plan your build orders before T2, make sure to take this difference into account. Third, land factories and air factories can build different units except for engineers. The T1 air factory is much more useful because you can build scouts and even bombers to harass your opponent. The T2 air factory of UEF, Cybran, and especially Seraphim can build T2 bombers to harass your opponent. On the other hand, the T2 land factory of Aeon and UEF can build mobile shields that can cover your base and your ACU in emergencies. But in most cases, we only build engineers with the factory. In my opinion, both options are reasonable, but the build order starting with a land factory is much easier for newbies. So we will use the land start in the tutorial. Second question, where do you build your first factory? You can either build it anywhere or use some adjacency bonus, like choose to place it adjacent to the hydro or the two mexes. I actually checked the Lua scripts about adjacency buffs. A T1 max adjacent to a factory reduces its mass consumption by 7.5%, while a T2 max reduces it by 10%. A hydro can reduce the energy consumption of an adjacent factory by 12.5%. Note that a factory can be adjacent to 2 maxes instead of 1 hydro, so it is clear that the mass buff is far superior to the energy buff. So we choose to place the factory adjacent to 2 maxes, even if we will have to reclaim the factory later to build mass storages. After building your first factory, 3 or 4 maxes, the hydro, and the rest of T1 maxes, we need to send T1 engineers to do different jobs. First, we need 1 or 2 engineers to reclaim these rocks as early as possible. Second, we need 3 to 4 engineers to build T1 power generators. We need 11 to 15 T1 pigeons before your first T2 pigeon. The choice depends on whether you start with land or air and how much energy your teammates overflow to you. Third, we need 2 to 4 engineers to collect tree reclaims around your base. Reclaiming trees not only gives you mass and energy in the early game, but also clears the ground so that you can build there smoothly in the late game. Last but not least, we send all remaining engineers to assist max upgrades and build mass storage. ACU is also an important part of your early build power because they have a larger build range, so they don't need to move frequently. You can either use it to build T1 pigeons or to assist max upgrades. If we use T2 HQ for T2 tech, we can only build at most 10 engineers before upgrading the factory to get the first T2 engineer on time. So we need careful planning for all engineers. For me, I use the third engineer to reclaim rocks, and the first, second, fourth, and fifth engineer to build 13 T1 pigeons, the sixth, seventh, and eighth engineer to reclaim trees. The ACU plus the ninth and the 10th engineer, together with engineers that have finished building T1 pigeons to assist max upgrades and to build mass storages. In this way, I will have a T2 engineer out right after I finished all T2 maxes and the 4 mass storages. The timing is usually around 5 minutes and 35 seconds. As you can see, there are 4 groups of mexes in your base, each of which has 2 mexes with a space between them. We upgrade mexes group by group. In each group, we upgrade 2 mexes and build a mass storage between them. We don't build more mass storages. Why? Let me do some math for you. A T1 mass extractor yields 2 mass per second, and a T2 mass extractor yields 6 mass per second. The upgrading takes 900 mass, so this investment takes 900 divided by 6 minus 2, which equals 225 seconds to pay back. A mass storage, which worth 200 mass, increases mass production of nearby mass extractors by 12.5%, which is 0.25 for each T1 max and 0.75 for each T2 max. Therefore, a mass storage adjacent to 2 T2 max takes only 200 divided by 0.75 times 2 equals to 133 seconds to pay back. So we should build it early. However, a mass storage adjacent to only one T2 max takes 200 divided by 0.75, which equals to 267 seconds to pay back. This is greater than 225. So I would rather upgrade next max to T2 instead of building this mass storage. The last question is about the T2 options. Here are illustrated the build order where we build T2 LAN or air HQs to access T2 tech. There are 2 alternatives: T2 Naval HQ, which we absolutely don't want as an eco, or the ACU's T2 Engineering Suite. This option is rarely chosen on DualGap, and I will tell you why. First, the ACU's T2 Engineering Suite consumes too much energy, about double as a T2 LAN HQ. You will need more T1 pigeons in the early game, and your mass upgrades will then be delayed. Indeed, the ACU's T2 Engineering Suite is cheaper than the T2 HQs with respect to mass. However, you will reclaim your T2 HQ and get most of the mass back very soon, so it makes no sense to save mass here. Therefore, we usually just build T2 HQ for T2 tech. In this episode, we talked about the build order on the T1 stage. Hope you learned something that you didn't know, and see you in the next episode.